This is the court's final order, which grants partial summary judgment. And it's helpful because while partial summary judgment isn't the entire case, it's almost always worth it because it may get rid of some aspects of the case. In this instance, and I think Carlos pointed this out to me first, and I wasn't quite sure what he meant, but I realize what he meant now. The only portion it looks to me like still survives is the claim that Ms. Rosado didn't properly file Mr. Castro's income tax returns, perhaps for 2 years. All this would do is probably make her responsible for whatever penalties he had to pay. I don't know the exact extent of how much was owed, but the penalty will often be based on that. So it's not a large amount of money. And I think that what it points to is this is a pretty substantial defeat for Mr. Castro's claim. But anyway, they grant part of it and they deny part of it, but they pretty much grant everything with the exception of the claim against Ms. Rosado for her failing to take care of the tax returns that presumably she may have been responsible for. But in any event, it's a very tiny amount. Everything else is barred by the statute of limitations. I think the one issue that will be interesting to follow, it's on appeal now, by the way, and the issue that will be interesting to follow is Ms. Rosado had a power of attorney from Mr. Castro. It is not, I think, a traditional contract, so the court would not impose breach of contracts by her failing to live up to all of the responsibilities. They didn't treat it as a contract. They dealt with it just as a power of attorney. A contract is mutual responsibilities. I give you $500. You are to paint my house. We each have a responsibility. In her case, she has a duty to act as a fiduciary, but it's not a contractual duty. It's the duty that runs with the power of attorney agreement. What the court was saying was Mr. Castro's attorneys did not convince the court that a power of attorney should be treated as a contract. That's the long and short of it. And we'll have to see how that's decided. But certainly the court doesn't see it as a contract. And accordingly, the only two surviving claims are the breach of the fiduciary duty, which is not a breach of contract. I wanted you to see this. This order could have been prepared by any number of people. Could have been prepared by the court. Some courts will do that. Most of them are a little too busy to do that, certainly in state courts. So what would happen is they decide the case. The order that they submitted as a proposed order isn't going to cover everything the way the court decided it. So in their decision, they let the winning party know, submit an order that conforms to our decision, and this is the document that gets provided, and this is the document that eventually Judge Lackman signs. So I wanted you to see that, just another interesting part of a somewhat interesting case.